So, all right. Well, the title was Free Speech or Hate Speech, which is sort of the main issue. And maybe there will not be so much discussion on that subject, but I think we would be able to get back to it and talk about it. But the challenge is a little bit to go through the actual judgment or ruling. And I tried to find it in Swedish. There should be a Swedish version in Finland, but I didn't find one, and we didn't have so many days to prepare. So I asked Cedric to translate it into Swedish and then into English also. So that translation is a machine translation. So it's not perfect. It has some flaws, and some of them we will talk about, and others, but just so you know. But anyway, this is a big subject, and we cannot say all that is warranted on this subject. But instead, as I said, we will focus on this case that was recently adjudicated by the Finnish Supreme Court, actually March 26th. So it's only last week. And the ruling by the court was quite a big surprise, I think, especially maybe for the people involved, because the lower courts, the district court and the Court of Appeals, had both acquitted the people who have been accused of wrongdoing. So first, I'd like to go through the text of the judgment in terms of structure. I'm used to reading Swedish judgments, but the Finnish one is fairly similar. But if you're not used to that, it's helpful, I think, to go through the structure of the text. And as you can see, it's there are no persons, no personal names mentioned in the ruling that is publicly available. So the person that is A, that's Päivi Räsänen, who has been a politician, and she is a physician as a former profession, or I don't know if she's practicing, but that was her profession. And through all the machine translation, it has been her pronouns is always he. So it's sort of funny. You read about he and him, but actually it's a she and her. So now we know that. And then there is another person, who is the one who asked Räsänen to write an article a long time ago, in 2004, which is one of the problems, or one of the issues here. And it has been, this text has been published through this organization and a diocese, actually. So they have also been involved as a vehicle of this article that has been criticized. Okay, when we've understood the basics of the case and the ruling, I'd like to make some personal observation and critical assessments. So the first is a short presentation, and then there is the prosecutors, who are the ones having brought the case before the courts. And their claims are found on pages 1 through 4. So if you just scroll down and then you will see on page 4, you will see the district court judgment very shortly, just 3 pages, 2 pages. And even shorter is the ruling or judgment of the Helsinki Court of Appeal. Those 2 judgments were in 2022 and 2023. And then comes a section which deals with the appeal to the Supreme Court, and it's found on page 6 and 7. And then the decision of the Supreme Court is found or starts at page 7, and it runs all the way through page 28. So this is the bulk of this text. And actually, I thought we would start from the back. So if you turn to page 27 and 28, you find the judgment as follows. So they relate to the judgment of the Court of Appeals. A is found guilty of incitement against an ethnic group committed between November 4th, 2019 and January 24, 2022. And that is count 1, which I will explain. And she is sentenced to 20 daily fines. And B is found guilty of the same for the same period of time and also the same fine. And then there is a foundation that is sentenced to a corporate fine of 5,000 euros. And then there is something about the text that statements in this particular text of the article, the statements mentioned in paragraph 78 of the Supreme Court's judgment, we will come back to that, are ordered to be removed from public access and destroyed. In all other aspects, the Court of Appeal's judgment remains unchanged. Then we'll go back to page 7, where the decision starts, and the first pages are the background of the case. And the issue on page 8 is point number or paragraph number 7 under the heading 2. The question before the Supreme Court is whether A's conduct described in counts 1 and 3 and B's conduct described in count 2 meet the elements of the offense of incitement against an ethnic group. If they are found guilty of a crime through their conduct, the case also involves the determination of penalties, the conditions for imposing a corporate fine, and the conditions for issuing an order to remove and destroy online messages. So that is in short what it's about. Then there are 3 pages about the applicable penal provisions and basis for assessment. And from page 10, there is a discussion of freedom of speech and relevant case law for that issue. And there I would like to stop at number 17, paragraph 17. In its case law, the Supreme Court of Finland has held that the core principles of the protection of freedom of expression is the right to express, publish, and receive information on opinions and other messages without prior interference by anyone. Freedom of expression may be exercised through all forms of media, and it also applies to the expression of offensive, exaggerated, and disruptive opinions. So that is sort of the scope of the freedom of expression, which is interesting, that it includes offensive and exaggerated and disruptive opinions explicitly in this ruling is cited. And then we come to at page 13 and 2. And this is about an article about homosexuality and the Bible. We should have the title of the, I don't know if I can find, yes. It's found on page 1, you don't have to look it up, but it says, the title of the article was, "He created them male and female. Homosexual relationships challenge the Christian view of humanity." That is the title of the article, written in 2004. So then the discussion is, was there a problem with this article? The law was changed in Finland to include sexual orientation as a basis for discrimination in 2011, June 1st. And the discussion is by the court is that during the time period up until this indictment was made by the prosecutors, there was no problem with this text because it wasn't spread, it wasn't known, and it was basically directed towards well, Christians or the church or this group, this church or diocese. Something like that is what they're saying. So there was no problem up until 2019, but then there was a problem. And the reasoning is that when this charge was made, Päivi Räsänen, she published this article on Facebook and on her own webpage. And because it was a public prosecution, it received quite some attention, at least in Finland, and to some extent outside of Finland too. So then they say that there is a problem. There may be a problem for that time period because she made this text available, because she wanted everyone to know what was in it. What did she actually write that caused this indictment? Count 2 is basically the same, but it just relates to the publisher, the person that's called B here. And then maybe we should look first at count 3, which is a separate case, separate thing. And what it is that when there was a discussion in Finland about within the Finnish church, the state church, that maybe it should be allowed that homosexual couples should be able to get married. And when that happened, Päivi Räsänen tweeted about this, and she asked us several questions. Is this really in line with the Bible, and so on? And then she quoted Romans 1. She didn't comment anything about this. So there were the questions, and then there was just a cutout from Romans 1, the latter part of Romans 1, I think from verse 26 or so. In this, in this part, there's the use of the words shame and sin, and that comes directly from Romans 1. So the discussion that the court has on this is rather interesting, because they find there is no problem here. Actually, we should go to page 22, the verses 24 through 27 in chapter 1 of Romans. And you can see it quoted there in paragraph 69. And what they're saying is they discuss what can actually be, what is the message, because the message is not so clear. But they say that this is a context of, it's a religious context, so you have to take that into account, which means the issue of religious freedom is applicable here. They also emphasize the fact that there is an ongoing discussion. So this is contribution from her to that discussion within the Finnish church. And if I remember correctly, that is exactly the time period when it was decided that you can actually get married. A same-sex couple could get married in the Finnish church. I think it was 2019. They find there's no problem here, and that is, in a way, it's sort of surprising, but it's very interesting the way that they reason about it. If you look at paragraph 72 and the second last point or meaning or sentence, it says the message does not directly convey the opinion that the prosecutors have claimed it expresses. So they don't agree with the prosecutors. And then they continue, however, the message can be considered to, if the terms shame and sin used in it are examined in their common language meanings. And then in the next paragraph, I also jump a bit down. These clear connections in paragraph 73, these clear connections between A's message and the accompanying Bible text support A's claim that he used, or she should be, used the terms shame and sin in their religious sense in his message. The Supreme Court finds that this was also apparent to outside readers. So the message is what the Bible says, actually. That's what they say. And so they say in the middle of paragraph 75, the message thus also constituted participation in a theological debate, which they find important. And number 76, taking into account the significance of freedom of religion as a fundamental and human right, the Supreme Court finds that the threshold for intervening through criminal law in a religious community's discussion, that is the Finnish church, for the community's activities must be set high. So they don't want to intervene there, really. And they also said that she has not insulted homosexuals as a group. Okay, so that is very important part of this discussion. So it's not only that it's from the Bible, but it's in the context of an internal church related debate ongoing at that time. That is very important. And they don't want to mess too much in that. So then, what is the problem with the article? Because that is the problem according to the court. And then we should go to, I think, page 13. So I'll just say that on page 17, or maybe we should start actually at the page 2. So these are the quotes starting from page 2. They have cut out 9 different sections that the prosecutors find problematic. Cannot read all of them, but I would like you to read it for yourself. I'll just read a little bit. Number 1, the earlier a young person has homosexual experience, the more difficult it is, according to studies, to overcome his inclination later on. This was number 1. Number 2, number 3, ultimately the question is whether homosexuality is a neutral state or a negative development disorder. Number 5, a homosexual inclination is not in and of itself a trait comparable to a mental health problem or physical illness. Instead, scientific evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates that homosexuality is a disorder of psychosexual development. Well, there are several other. So there are 9, and then we can turn to what the Supreme Court thought about this. So they found 6 of these statements to be unacceptable or wrong or something like that. And it's under the heading 8, finding of guilt, 8.1, count 1. And then it's under 78. So those two, page 2 and page 24, should be compared to each other. But the interesting thing is, I think, that there's a focus on the on issues like disorder and psychosexual development and things like that. And then one wonders, where does this come from? Which I think is a very, very important point to understand this ruling. Obviously, there was an expert opinion issued by the Finnish National Institute for Health and Welfare in 2020. And the court treats this opinion as fact. They don't discuss it. They take it just as at face value. And in this expert opinion, which was presented in this case, indicates that according to modern medicine, psychiatry, homosexuality is considered part of the normal spectrum of sexuality. Now, this is science, as you understand, all of you. It is not regarded as a physical or mental illness or a comparable disorder, and there are no medical grounds for characterizing homosexuality as a psychosexual developmental disorder, a mental disorder, a developmental disorder, or developmental deviation in relation to heterosexuality, or a psychopathological disorder or perversion. Claiming that homosexuality is a disorder of psychosexual development is therefore, in light of prevailing medical understanding, a false claim that can be considered defamatory towards homosexuals. So this is the crux of the matter. And there are many things to be said about this, but I just like to point out that this it's the crux of understanding this ruling this judgment, because this expert opinion is treated as fact. It's not controversial. It's even though it says in light of prevailing medical understanding, a false claim. It is not discussed whether Räsänen has some point in what she is saying, but this is the fact, and this is the basis for the whole ruling, actually. And I find that a little bit, what can I say, uncomfortable. Anyway, and I would like to say that many of the things that Räsänen is saying, she's saying because she is a doctor. She's a physician, and she has written about medicine and about psychiatry. And maybe things have changed in what they think. That's not really my subject, and I cannot very much comment on that. But I'd like to just point out that this is what I just read about the expert opinion. That is the basis for the whole ruling. Because she doesn't agree with that, or the article, what she read, doesn't agree with that, then she's in trouble. And in paragraph 53, it says that she has argued from a medical textbook in use during her student years from 1978 to 1984. And she has admitted that the text was outdated in this regard, but has still argued that psychosexual development disorder is a medically neutral concept. And they find that to be an erroneous claim. All right. And then they discuss that more in detail. But I think I'll go on a little bit with my comments. So there was only a problem with this article from 2019 until 2022, not before that, even though it was the same text. But it was only until it was made more public, more broadly public, that there was a problem. Okay, so the ruling is an incitement against an ethnic group. Now, this is a problem of translation, of course. We have the same problem in Swedish. But so these are my own comments. Is homosexuality, is that an ethnicity? And now that could be a problem of the law text, that there is not sufficient reason to make that into an ethnic group or something like that, or a societal group, which is sometimes said. Another issue is the concept of sexual orientation. They discuss homosexuality, but really it's a sexual orientation is the exact wording of the law since 2011 in Finland. And there is another question: is a characteristic that cannot be changed? Is it a characteristic that cannot be changed? As when this kind of legal thinking was introduced after the Second World War, because of the treatment of the Jews in Germany. Is it a characteristic that cannot be changed, like if you're a Jew or if you're not? One could have questions about whether sexual orientation is something that can change, can vary. Between orientation towards a man, woman, animal, etc. Is it a sufficiently stable group or individuals? And then there is the issue of who is to decide. is a subjective, subjectively determines that is only the person himself can have an opinion on this, what kind of sexual orientation I have. And I think the basic reasoning is from the contemporary view is that all people have sexual preferences or a sexual orientation. So in that sense, all are the same. And therefore there should be no discrimination because of differences of sexual orientation. That is the basic reasoning. If there are basic differences, then you can discriminate. If there are no basic differences between a Jew and another Gentile or whatever, because they're both human beings to the same extent, then you should not have any discrimination in that sense. But if there is a basic difference, then you can have discrimination. This reasoning that all sexual orientations are to be treated equally, mistaken reasoning. And I would claim that the biblical worldview would say that there is a real basis for discrimination, that is, for making a difference, and not only between different sexual orientations, but between sexual practices. Why? Why would that be? And I would say that because the cause of a human being is a heterosexual relationship, and that is the case always, everywhere, and at all times. Anyone in participating in this call has or has had two parents, and invariably of opposite sexes. And if that were not true, it is anyway a combination of a male seed cell and a female egg cell. In all cases, all human beings have this as a historical background or starting point. And it is true even for anyone not participating in this call. And thus there is a basis for distinguishing between heterosexual orientation or practice or relationship on the one hand, and homosexual orientation or practice or relationships. The latter is never the cause of a human being's existence. And thus there is a basis for discriminating between hetero and homo, and between what is marriage and what is key. And underlying this differentiation is from Genesis 2 and Matthew 19, therefore a man shall leave his parents and cleave to his wife, and thou shalt not commit adultery. So the reason for this confusion from a biblical perspective is, I believe, the separation between sex and procreation, or more pointedly, between sexual activity and the basis for my own existence as a human being and all other human beings as well. And this separation between sex and procreation, I think that God never intended, I would argue. So then, in conclusion, we can come back to the issue of free speech or hate speech. So I think the basic problem here is that there is a rule that you cannot discriminate. You're not allowed to discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation. That is a mistake because of a reasoning that does not take into account that sexual activity, orientation, etc., should not be separated from procreation or the idea, the fact, any and every human being has his existence because of a heterosexual combination or union and not a homosexual one. And that is no small thing. It's actually one of the main aspects of our existence. How does it all start? So it's a failure to recognize this fact and only look separating sexuality from what constitutes a human being. And that is why it is considered such to say things like this, which the Bible says also, because the basic view of the modern view is does not take into account our actual facts for the basis of our human existence. And well, those were my comments. And so if I try to summarize again, it seems like it's a focus on psychology and medicine, psychiatry, that has created this problem, basically. The problem with sin and shame in the Bible is not a problem, according to this Finnish law, if it is done at least in the context of an ongoing debate, if it's done in the context of the church, and therefore has also the protection of religious freedom, which seems like it's a reality in Finnish law. I would personally be surprised if I read something like that in Sweden, because I don't think the protection of religious freedom in Sweden would be this strong, actually. And then also, as I pointed out, that this expert opinion from a Finnish authority has, there is no discussion about that, and it serves as a final word for the court, which I think is, I shouldn't say cowardly, but it's a bit surprising that this should just be taken as this is fact and this is false. And personally, I will not comment on that, because it's not really something that I know very much about. I would be interested to hear more about it, especially what she has to say, Päivi Räsänen herself. But yeah, thank you.